Class, and Poverty. Chapter 10, Nancy Boyd Franklin, What is Normal? How do we normalize different issues? The issues of racism and oppression cannot typically be normalized. It has to be understood as an experience of many people. It's an oppressive mark. It has justified slavery. It's justified issues like Jim Crow laws. It has justified the perpetration of the middle class and upper class and the devaluation of lower class, people of color, people of lower class and poverty lines. Jones and Penderhughes have shown over time that race has acquired a social meaning and kind of a stereotype based on skin color, not always the actual truth. If you're looking at what sociologists understand race to be, we have three major races and then variations among those. Caucasoid typically are Caucasian families of white, presenting with white skin. Mongoloid are the Native American and the Asian families with a different color, kind of different eye structure, and what we consider to be darker red, yellowish bronze tones. And Negroid, which are the African races, the Aboriginal races, and then mixtures and intermarriages between those that have provided us with other types of groups. Looking at racism, the invisibility syndrome, and gender issues, and how families socialize and raise boys versus girls, how parents are understood to have power as either male or female, what the impact of race is on child rearing, the impact of race is on same-sex marriages, what the impact of social class, and class is typically understood to be how much money is available to a family, how much disposable income is available to a family. There is a myth of class, not race, that class is the dividing line. It may be true that families of a certain class experience more similar responses from other people. If you had an African American, Caucasian, Native American, Asian, and Hispanic family all living in government funded housing projects versus those same families living in wealthy neighborhoods such as Cobb or Gwinnett, possibly there are many more similarities and fewer class distinctions. However, the distinctions between race, culture, and ethnicity still exist, class notwithstanding. Middle class African American families, at the point of this publication of this book, were 25% of the American community. I know that has gone up since then. Many middle class educated African American, Hispanic, and Asian families have encountered a glass ceiling very similar to what females in the corporate world have experienced when they get to a certain point, and the income level simply does not match what is typically understood to be a white male income, Caucasian male income. Those kinds of discriminatory and prejudicial reactions that are subtle are understood to be microaggressions within the socioeconomic level. Tokenism, hiring people just specifically for their gender or their class or race, ethnicity, or culture still remains. Poverty in the victim system, the welfare system, feeling trapped, disempowered, marginalized, minimized, without the ability to have movement between class and neighborhoods, and the kind of the expectations of middle class society. Looking at things like substance abuse, looking at the prison systems where Hispanic males and African American males are very much overrepresented in prison systems, as is Hispanic families, African American families, lower income Caucasian families are overrepresented in the Child Protective Services and the substance abuse issues. It doesn't mean that all of these social ills do not occur across class. social class continuum, it means that the ability to have financial resources to address those issues sometimes keeps families who have then a higher level of income, they're able to seek resources as medical care, psychiatric care, detox, rehab facilities versus prison and defects intervention. Racism and poverty, racism and anger and rage, attitudes of mental health workers toward poor families, families without class, families that are homeless with teenage pregnancies, that are unemployed, that are on the welfare rolls. Quite often those families fall to the lower end of the spectrum with responsive clinical health, and those services need to be expanded to, and the same type of services offered to every family irrespective of race, class, poverty, culture, or ethnicity. Looking at strengths and survival skills, and the ability to have strong family systems, strong community systems, strong spiritual systems to help families that have not had the same resources function and cope. Many families from different cultures and races that have been marginalized within middle-class American systems have learned to survive in ways that we who may have more income and financial resources might not be as effective. If we were to have to find shelter without a home, food from the food banks and the soup kitchens, the inner cities, the ability to find places to live overnight, stay overnight, placing children with family members because of displacement and homelessness, we might not be as well based in our functionality as some of these families have been forced to be. Being able to function and cope is largely an outcome of where we find ourselves, and if we don't find ourselves in our comfort zone, our ability to cope is then compromised. Aponte, 1994, has done a great deal of work with African American families in inner cities and raised the cultural dynamic as far as our understanding of clinical outcomes and the way to deal with them. In Afrocentric tradition and views of the world, the psyche and the spirit are one, so spirituality sometimes for certain African American Asian families is much stronger than may be found with certain Caucasian families. Again, assumptions are not necessary, stereotypes should not be made. What should happen is an understanding of some of these trends within families, and then to investigate and ask tentative questions to understand what's being presented by the family that you are seeing. Looking at extended family child rearing, bringing in aunts, fathers, relatives, teenagers, grandparents to assist with single parents, to assist with teen pregnancies, understanding whether with a certain family culture, with a teen pregnancy, is an abortion the first choice? Is adoption the first choice? Is neither of those a choice? Do we blame the victim? Do we keep the child? Do we raise the child? How is it that we work toward empowering our families and understanding the structures with racism, classism, poverty, and families that have become disenfranchised because of those issues? Empowerment through multiple family groups, through a multi-systemic community resource system, empowerment around training of clinicians and understanding social policy interventions, being able to help families advocate for themselves while we advocate for them as well. Incorporating a strong sense of social justice is necessary as we try to give quality clinical services to these families. So thank you again. We'll follow up.